CandidApp. Parallel vote counting system. Voters fighting against fraud. Apps: GV Trump, vTrump, DV Trump. Application logistics, processes description, external strategy, general considerations, appendix. If there are no illegalities under any circumstances, the development and implementation of the described applications on following are entirely feasible. If, author: Wafredo Antonio Francisco de Oliveira. YouTube channel, W. Oliveira. Email, w.oliveira2022@hotmail.com. Contact call, country code 55. Area code 21. Telephone number and WhatsApp 9855999423. Author's main credentials. 2003 in Texas, as a Quality Assurance Systems Analyst. Working for EDS Engineering and Logistics, Government Solutions Department. 1998 in Texas, as an application consultant for mainframe computers. Sabre Inc., assigned to the Flight Planning Department. 2015 in Rio de Janeiro, as an information analyst. Working for the 2016 Olympic Games Organizing Committee, as a logistic consultant for the Arrivals and Departures System. 1988 in Texas, as an application consultant for a TPF mainframe operations system. Working for American Airlines, part of the Direct Canadair Development Group. Other companies: Embratel, Brazil; Varig, Brazil; VASP, Brazil; HP, USA. Currently retired by the US and Brazilian Social Securities. Authors. Topic 1. Application logistics. Data. In order to provide credibility, legitimacy, and reliability to the data collected, the applications will require 3 personal information from all users in order to get registered in it. Data. When registering in the applications GV Trump, vTrump, and DV Trump, to become an user, the citizens will be required to inform their voter registration and social security cards numbers, in addition to a legitimate email address. Date changing mind. An option in these apps will allow the user to exchange their candidate at any time, so they can register in another app and alter their electoral preference, until the day before the election. App: GV Trump. Gonna vote Trump. Concept and definition. It is an app that will collect, by the free and spontaneous will of its users, their options as voting citizens, sympathizing exclusively with a specific candidate, in any period of time prior to the date of the suffrage. App: GV Trump. Gonna vote Trump. Example. This apps is intended to collect the voters' votes sympathetic to President Donald Trump's candidacy election. App: vTrump. Voted Trump. Concept and definition. It's an app that will collect, by the free will of its users, information about what their vote choices were for a specific candidate during a given election, after they've already made their choices and cast their votes in the polls. App: vTrump. Voted Trump. Example. This apps is intended to collect the voters' votes who chose the candidate Donald Trump for the presidency of the United States of America. App: vTrump. Voted Trump. Illegality. An illegality option should be available in this app, due to the relevant number of arguments about possible frauds occurred during the last election. DV Trump. Don't vote Trump. Concept and definition. It's an app that will collect in advance, by the free and spontaneous will of its users, information about their lack of interest in voting for a specific candidate for a certain election. App: DV Trump. Don't vote Trump. Example. This app is intended to collect the lack of interest from users to vote for the candidate Donald Trump for President of the United States of America. Topic 2. Human resources. It will be necessary to gather a very effective technical team, maybe in an emergency task force rhythm, depending upon the effective election date, composed of experienced professionals in quality assurance analysis consultation, information analysts, apps developers in the most diverse digital platforms, Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, etc. Specialists in technological infrastructures, specialists in administration, organization, and databases generation, testers, among any others that may be necessary, considering that the app GV Trump Gonna Vote Trump will need to be developed, tested and implemented as soon as possible prior to the election date, or any time just to check up candidates' amount of votes intention. Topic 3. External strategy. Apps, GV Trump, V Trump, and DV Trump. Considering that, nowadays, the renowned press and digital media, both national and foreign are, without any shadow of doubt, taking the left-wing political side, publishing absolutely none positive accomplished by the right-wing politicians, a massive publication of these apps is required, mainly through networks via the internet, published, in order to fight against all the fake news in an effective and active way. Mainly using the popularity of celebrities or any other publicly known persons who support President Trump's conservative democracy, to intensively spread these apps' facilities and benefits, in order to compete, in the same way, against the insistent fake news, repeated by leftist-wing politics in the most varied digital and printed media, which still brainwash a population of weak minds, incapable of understanding between right and wrong. In order to stop the destructive trajectory of a huge fire, sometimes it is necessary to use the fire itself to fight against it. President Trump himself emphasizing about the apps, besides his celebrity friends, in order for the apps to be downloaded by a relevant mass of people would be of great benefit to a considerable collection of data from American voters sympathetic to the conservative democracy defended by the former American president. Topic 4. General considerations. Apps, GV Trump, V Trump, and DV Trump. Even if only the app GV Trump, Gonna Vote Trump, has been activated at the web, the data collected could greatly impress, and shock the political opposition. Because a prior capture, considerably relevant or perhaps even too large, of voting intentions, considering a confrontation with the actual number of existing voters, might put on alert to those whom are possibly planning to install some spyware code to defraud the polls. Keeping these apps under complete secrecy as much as possible until they are implemented and published, would be strategic to take the opposition by surprise. Allowing the general public to become aware, under a shower of disclosures from celebrities, Facebook groups, WhatsApp, Telegram, etc., before being blocked by social networks, which support the political opposition, millions of people, probably, would have already downloaded them all in their devices. The fact is that the criteria adopted for voters to become the aforementioned apps' registered users, makes them, without any shadow of a doubt, unquestionably unique, through their social security, voter registration card numbers and their personal email addresses. Much more suitable than the criteria adopted by the Time magazine to choose the personality of the year, which only requires an email address, since a same person can have more than one email profile. This same presentation has been sent to the Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, and based on impressions caused by logistical works on past dates when working for American IT companies in Texas, idealized, documented, and created by this video presentation's author, there is some possibility that Mr. Trump, sympathizer of a political management ideal similar to President Bolsonaro's, also might be interested in the development of these apps aimed particularly at him, as well as any other Democratic conservative right-wing candidate or head of state. This, if some of Mr. Trump's assistant, with vision and experience in computerization and application logistics, had idealized, developed and implemented something similar to described in this presentation, perhaps he would have been able of judicially to appeal at some court of justice against the fraud suspicions at the polls during the last U.S. suffrage, which elected Joe Biden. This author would not like to see these apps designed by him, being developed and implemented by people from left-wing politics. Apps, GV Trump, V Trump, and DV Trump. These apps' general targets. Objective and reliable voting intentions prediction. On the day of the suffrage, if partial reports from the polls can be eventually issued and/or browsed, a comparison of the ballots counted can be made in a real-time pattern during the election, against votes confirmed by the V-Trump Voted Trump app's checkup, to alert in a timely manner any probable discrepancy, perhaps caused by fraud, in the course of an election. Voted votes counted by the app V-Trump Voted Trump versus partial or final official poll counted votes. Predict possible attempts at false identity during the elections, through voters registered as users in the apps, those whom did not have their IDs and/or emails properly validated. People's approval rate of a candidate or a head of state. People's disapproval rate of a candidate or a head of state. If we consider a top 10 complexity level to develop the WhatsApp app for mobile devices, possibly, the apps G-V-Trump, V-Trump, and N-V-Trump, could be placed in a level between 2 1/2 and 3, for they are quite easier. Appendix. The C-Plan. If using the apps described in this presentation does not work out as a B-Plan as a parallel ballots count for an election under suspicion of fraud, a C-Plan can be used to face cyber attacks or of any other nature of threat. The C-Plan. Resource. Set up a telemarketing network to be activated at the exact moment the elections begin, with the following strategies. Objective. The main objective is implementing a telemarketing network to answer telephone calls, by operators or automatic recorded voice menu, of voters confirming their votes for candidates and/or complaining about irregularities, who, for some reason, had difficulties to input their votes in the polls, according to their real choices. The attendance. In order of not wasting time unnecessarily, due to the possibility that many other voters are trying to contact to confirm their votes and/or recording complaints, a script must be prepared in advance in which the operator goes directly to the matter in question. In order to prevent voters from quitting the phone call out of waiting too long to be answered by the telemarketing service, if the number of calls increases to the point that operators cannot handle it within at least some reasonable waiting time, an option to leave messages can be used, in which the voter will provide name and telephone number, so that an operator will return the call as soon as possible in order to collect and record voters' confirmation and/or problems regarding the use of the polls. Apps, G-V-Trump, V-Trump, and D-V-Trump. Plan C, General Considerations. The veracity of the votes actually voted in a candidate and the occurrences with the difficulties encountered by voters with the polls will be duly verified, through the numbers of their social securities and voters' registration card numbers, which may subsequently be crossed with other similar occurrences in the same areas and/or sections of voting. It will occur that even sections and/or zones of voting, which presented problems in their polls, may have been claimed by voters, which for any reasons they did not want to identify themselves. However, possibly, other voters who voted at these same zones and/or sections did complain in some way identifying themselves, emphasizing the complaints of those anonymous voters. The app V-Trump, Voted Trump, can become a double checkup to confirm both voted votes, and the troubles faced by voters who have also used telemarketing for this purpose if this app V-Trump has been developed, implemented, and is enabled during the election period. Indisputable proof of a politic candidate's popular preference, if the users of the G-V-Trump app, gonna vote Trump, result in an undisputed majority for the election of President Trump, and also reflect on the voting intentions also counted and confirmed by the users of the V-Trump app, voted Trump, after leaving the ballot boxes in which they confirmed their votes, in addition to a voluminous amount of confirmations made by voters in telephone calls to the telemarketing system dedicated for this purpose during the elections. Apps, G-V-Trump, V-Trump, and D-V-Trump. Project development and implementation. A documentation was created, containing chronologically and logistically all steps and the timeline for the apps herein described to be developed and tested, up to its end, for implementation in a production environment and delivery to the final user. Thanks. We appreciate your attention and make ourselves available for any questions that may be necessary. Yours sincerely, Wilfredo Antonio Francisco de Oliveira.